Mic check 1 2 1 2 and 1 2 1 2 and mic check 1 2 1 2 and 1 2 1 2. Hello again to all my friends. Let's get this party started.
Hey y'all, I'm Kimberland, and this is the Frolicking Truth, a soft space for Black women who are tired, brilliant, and ready to heal. Here, joy meets justice. We calm our Black ass nervous systems, we unmask, and we leave behind whatever that is trying to kill us. You're seen here, you're safe here, and you don't have to do this alone.
Yes. Hello. Hello. Hey, y'all. Come on in, find a comfortable spot, and take a seat. Welcome to episode 31 of the Frolicking Truth podcast for Black women who are tired, brilliant, and ready to heal, where joy meets justice and our nervous systems get free. I'm excited to have you here with me today. I really am. So, even if you don't identify with any of those descriptors, please do stick around. All I ask is that you come ready to listen, to learn, and to support. So, my name is Kimberland, and I often forget to say that, but I didn't forget today. I didn't forget today. And I actually am recording this in November, right? So, I'm actually on break right now. And one of the reasons that I needed to do that is because what we're talking about today, which is emotional intelligence and emotional integrity, and really understanding what that means. But I am recording this in advance so that you're still getting this content today. So I do want to shout out the inner circle who is hanging out with me. That is my own special corridor and little slice of the world over in the archive, which is our Patreon. So I do want to invite you to join me over there. I'm actually still active in the Patreon right now, even though I'm on break. So they're getting all the behind the scenes stuff of what's happening during this month and next month while I am taking some time away. So if you are looking for community, you're wanting to get connected, you're wanting to understand the BTS, you want to know what's going on, come on over to the Patreon. Come and be a keeper in our archive and make your way down to the inner circle. All right. So you can do that by going to patreon.com/ minding my black ass business. That is how you can join me and join us over in the inner circle. All right. So, having said that, I don't have nearly as many announcements as I usually have. When this airs, it will be December 13th. And that means that the Healing Circle is happening directly after this episode. So, the Healing Circle is where myself and Vanessa from The Well Educator, we come together and we create a space for Black women to connect to their breath and connect to their bodies and take some time to do some breath work and a yoga flow, affirmations, and really just honor each other in community. So if that sounds like something that you want to check out, please do. I'm telling you, it is. As long as you're a Black woman. Now, if you aren't a Black woman, this space is not for you. Okay. But if you aren't a Black woman, send this to a Black woman and tell them to come on over because they probably need to breathe and reconnect to their breath. All right. But you can register for the Healing Circle at tinyurl.com/Black Women Healing Circle. We have the Healing Circle every second Saturday of the month, continuing into the new year. So you can register in advance for the circles that we have coming up. All right. So that'll be happening directly after this premiere. Speaking of premiere, if you're watching this during the premiere, there is a live chat. So go see who's in the chat. I might be in there. Some other folks from the community might be in there. So come and hang out with us. That way you can talk to me, you can talk to others, you can ask questions, you can share your commentary and your feedback about what you're receiving and all of that. All right. So come down into the live chat. Just click where it says join live chat. say hello. Let us know where you're joining us from and come be in community. All right. What if the thing you've always called too much was the exact thing God designed on purpose? This is for the ones who've always known they were different. Too sensitive, too loud, too knowing, too intuitive, too woo woo. But what if your sensitivity is actually your superpower? What if your intuition was your inheritance? Discover Your Destiny is a 10-week sacred journey back to yourself. We explore the design of your soul, your spiritual gifts, and the unique way that God speaks to you. This isn't church. It's not a rule book. It's not a performance. It's the moment you stop chasing approval and start walking in divine alignment. You'll gain clarity, language, and confidence around who you are and what you are here on the earth to do. You'll learn the real voice of God. And if you feel called to go on to become a certified intuitive melanated life coach, this is where that path begins. There are two ways to enter this sacred container: the Destiny track, full investments and coaching experience, or the Divine Exchange track, where internship meets soul work. You'll support podcasting, content creation, or brand development behind the scenes while learning how your unique gifts benefit the collective. Your knowing isn't a flaw, it's the fingerprints of God. This is your invitation, and I hope that you'll answer. All right, so this is episode 31, and episode 30, we talked about my journey to understanding that I am neurodivergent and what that looked like and sounded like along the way. And if you have not yet watched that, go back and check it out. It is a pretty interesting episode, if I must say so myself, you know. But yeah, so this week I wanted to talk about the emotional side of things, especially as a neurodivergent person, and to really help us to start thinking about what emotional intelligence really is. Not just like that is this corporate buzzword or like something that we're saying just to say it, but actually tapping into our spiritual, emotional, relational practices that guide us towards freedom and awareness and sense of deeper self-trust, if you will, right? So I want to just kind of pause here for a moment and take a moment to actually connect myself. One of the tools that I use to do that is the feelings wheel. So, if you've been following me for any amount of time, if you've had the pleasure of having one on one time with me, you know I will whip out the feelings wheel in a millisecond, okay? Because this is the way that I am able to practice what we call emotional integrity. Well, first emotional awareness and then emotional integrity. All right. So let me, before I get into all those things, let me share the feelings wheel just so I can show you how it works in case this is your first time being over here at the Frolicking Truth. So I am a teacher, y'all, all right? And a teacher gonna teach. So I be having my visual aids to make sure that we understand what is going on. So here on the screen, I have the feelings wheel. And this is a tool that we use to help us identify what our feelings are and to name what we are actually feeling. So inside the center of this wheel, we have these big feelings that are represented here. So we have happy, sad, disgusted, angry, fearful, bad, and surprised. These are feelings that we are hardwired with, that even as babies, we know these feelings. We don't have to learn the nuances of these big feelings. The further out that you get on the wheel, you get more specific, right? So each of the feelings is then broken down into some more feelings. Then when you get out to the third ring, it gets even more specific, where each of those feelings are now broken down to an additional two or three. So I want to take a moment to kind of just do a body scan and to think through what I am actually feeling right now. So let me just take a moment to kind of ground myself, and I invite you to do the same, to just take a couple of grounding breaths. Do a couple more. And when you inhale, try to fill up your belly as much as you can. And then out through your mouth. All right. So that helped me to kind of center myself. I also realized I didn't really breathe today, which is something that we breathe, of course, to sustain life, right? We're not dead. But oftentimes we don't breathe to really fill our oxygenate our bodies, if you will, oxygenate our brains, oxygenate our blood. We don't often do that. So I'm grateful that I just took that moment, and hopefully that also was helpful for you. All right, so let's get my feelings well shared here again, and I'm gonna zoom in. I think that today in my own body, I feel happy and peaceful. I feel thankful, um, creative. I feel confident and curious. I just had a really good meeting before this, and I'm really curious about where that's going to go. I also think I can add some eager over to it and some energetic. Um, and let's see if there's anything else. And I'm going to also throw in some inspired. Okay. So that's how my spirit is feeling today. Again, I invite you to access the feelings wheel and determine how your spirit is feeling today as well. So I wanted to do that at the top of this just to kind of give us an opportunity to ground and center ourselves, especially with the emotional climate that is present right now. It is so much that is going on in the world. So, for context, the day that I am recording this today is November 6th. So, if things have happened after this point, I'm not talking about it on here. So, but having said that, there's a lot that's happened. There was just an election. What's today? Today's Thursday. So there was just an election on Tuesday, and there were some positive gains in the election, and people are feeling a sense of hope again, it seems. And there is also a consistent heaviness that kind of just sits in the background of everything that is going on in the world right now and the way that people are choosing to show up. So we're holding space for all of that. And I know within my feelings wheel utilization just a moment ago, I did not really tap into my feelings about the world. I more so was talking about my personal world. And honestly, if I think about the state of the world right now, it really feels overwhelming and disappointing and heavy, you know. But even in that, I am doing all that I can to stabilize my internal world because I cannot operate in the external world if I do not stabilize my internal world. All right. So the weight of the world really requires this need for the ability to be able to self regulate. And when we're again today talking about emotional intelligence, it's really like the bridge between being aware in what's happening, but also having the integrity to be able to name it, right? So I have a quote here that I want to start with, and it says, emotional intelligence begins where reaction ends, in the pause where we choose who we want to be next. And this feels so authentic to what I feel like I'm experiencing right now because I'm doing all I can to put myself in a reflect and restore and renew type of space. And that is really important for me and the work that I do because there's constant like jarring things that happen like all the time, right? Especially in advocacy and activism, and I work in education. So there's a lot that goes along with that. So I have been really trying to be very intentional about honoring how I'm feeling, as well as talking about this concept of emotional integrity, of naming what I am actually feeling and creating space to hold what I'm actually feeling. Something that we do a lot that we've been trained to do, honestly, is emotional and spiritual bypassing. And we embrace things like toxic positivity. And so, toxic positivity might look like everything is crashing around you and you're like, no, everything's totally fine, everything, yep, all right, well, and then you add the spiritual bypassing on top of that. God is in control and amen, right? But you're not really necessarily being integrous about what you're actually feeling. And that's something that I used to do all the time. Like, I would really just be like everything's fine, even though inside my head I'm knowing that things are not fine. They're not fine at all, right? So let me back up a little bit and just make sure that we have consistent language. Okay. So when I say emotional intelligence, I'm talking about the ability to recognize, understand, manage our own emotions, and to recognize, understand, and create space for the emotions of other people. So it's not about suppressing the emotions. It's really about honoring our emotions and then integrating our emotions into the way that we are living in the world. Now, I've talked on here a few times about how when I was a kid, the communication that I received about who I was as a child is that I always had a tear ready to fall and I was always ready to cry about something. And I remember being quote unquote broken out of that type of way of existing and being told, I have to divorce myself from my emotions. So learning how to feel and learning how to identify emotions is a skill. That's not something that we are born with. While we are born with a certain set of emotions, we are not necessarily born with the skill to be able to identify what those emotions are. That's something that we learn. And you cannot learn emotional intelligence if you don't have emotionally intelligent people who are teaching you, right? So it really becomes an interesting type of cycle if you are around people who do not acknowledge their own emotions, who do not create space for emotions. Then this is how you get people who are suppressing their emotions or told they can't feel, or the only feeling that they are able to express, for instance, is anger, right? So I want to give us some tools, if you will, to really empower ourselves as we're thinking about this concept of emotional intelligence. So I'm going to go to this site. It's called Castle. And Castle is the organization that does like the leading research in social emotional intelligence. They're like the leaders in the industry. So a lot of the research and work that has been done through Castle is the foundational work of social emotional competencies and emotional intelligence and what that looks like. They also have a very extensive framework for how to implement this type of learning within classrooms and with young people and also with adults, right? Because emotional intelligence, I guess I need to pause here and say this, is that emotional intelligence is not just for children. Emotional intelligence is for people. So, especially in educational types of environments, a lot of times people will um they will be like, this is something that we're doing to the kids. Like the kids need to do the SEL. And it's like, no, actually, the kids don't have fully developed brains, which we'll get into in a second. So it really is up to the adults to be the ones who are managing these social emotional competencies. And often we as adults do not have the social emotional competencies that we are expecting children to be able to implement when children are children. So, how are we expecting children to be able to regulate their emotions, to name their emotions, and we as adults are not even able to do that? That doesn't make any sense. Okay. So, let me go ahead on and open this image so we can talk through these competencies. All right. So when we're talking about social emotional learning, there are five core competencies that go into this. And if you have been with us here on the Frolicking Truth before, you know that we bring this up every so often. So it's coming on back up today. All right. So it starts in this top right quadrant, or this isn't a quadrant. These are five in here, and I don't know what the five section is. So anyway, it starts over here with self-awareness. So self-awareness is being able to recognize your own emotions and values as well as your strengths and your challenges. Something that an easy way to be able to test this is if someone were to ask you or you were to have a conversation with somebody about what are both your strengths and your weaknesses. A lot of times we are trained to be critical and look for things to fix, and it is often really difficult for us to talk about the things that we're actually really good at and the things that we excel at. So, self awareness is where those kind of skills live, where you are able to think through not just how you were feeling, but also to have an objective understanding of who you are as a person, and an objective understanding again of the things that you do really well as the things that you want to work on. After self-awareness, the next part is self-management. So self-management has to do with, now that I understand my emotions, now that I've been able to name them on the feelings wheel, I understand the nuances of the different emotions. Now I have a plan for how I manage those emotions. I have the ability to be able to implement certain tools or implement certain strategies that can help me to remain at baseline as opposed to being thrown all over the place and tossed to and fro with my emotions. So, self management might look like when I feel overwhelmed, I am going to stop and take a deep breath. Or one of the things that I might do proactively to manage is I'm going to stretch or meditate or intentionally use my feelings wheels so that I can give myself the language that I need to use so that I'm able to advocate for what I need. So, all of that is stuff that we have to be able to do within ourselves and for ourselves as we're thinking about social emotional competencies and emotional intelligence. Now, once we understand that and we understand the things that we have to do within ourselves, then we move into a space of social awareness. And social awareness is when we understand that other people also are having these experiences and that they're in different places on in their path of what emotional awareness looks like. So, social awareness is where empathy lives and where we show understanding for other people and recognizing that they're in their own movie that is parallel to ours. With that social awareness, we take that and we think about building positive relationships. And positive relationships is not just the building and forming of those relationships, but it's also dealing with conflict and repairing those relationships when they are ruptured. Any relationship that you are in, there is going to be a time where there's some type of misunderstanding or some type of conversation that needs to be had in order to strengthen that relationship. So, within that building positive relationship skills, that is where that lives, where we learn how to build the relationships. We also learn how to repair the relationships and do the work that it takes to maintain those relationships. And when I say the work, a lot of that work is back up here in this self-awareness and self-management place. Okay. Now, the last component of social emotional competency is responsible decision making. And that's about making good choices for both yourself as well as the way that you interact with other people, and making those responsible decisions in order to support the type of outcome that is going to create an emotionally safe type of environment. All right. So, those are the five competencies of social emotional learning, of emotional intelligence. All right. All right. So now that we have that, and now that we know that, and now that we have that type of language, a part of us also understanding what's going on is understanding what happens in our brains when we are thinking about how our emotions play a role, right? So let me go back over to the image of our brain and take us through our brain research. All right. I know y'all didn't know you was coming to science class today, but here y'all are. Welcome. Glad you're here. Okay. So we have four areas of our brain that are represented here on the screen, and I'm going to start from the bottom to the top. So at the bottom of our brain, we have the area called the brain stem. And our brain stem controls our involuntary systems. It controls our fight, flight, freeze response. It works with the limbic system. Lord Jesus, I can't talk. It works with the limbic system to get us to act when there is some type of fear response that happens. So our brain stem is a part of our brain that we really don't have a lot of control over. When it says involuntary systems, that's our breathing, our blinking, our organ systems working. This is all the stuff that we don't have to consciously think, oh, I should do this now, right? The things just happen. So the limbic area, which is that next area, is where our amygdala lives. And our amygdala is like the security guard of our brain. So our amygdala lets us know, hey, stuff not looking right. We might need to flip the switch and let the brainstem take over, because we need to fight. We need to flee. We need to figure out what's going on. Danger, right? Or the amygdala says everything's cool. Y'all good. Everybody do what they need to do, right? So that's how the amygdala works. Now, what also lives in our limbic area is our hippocampus, which is where our memory lives, specifically our short-term memory. Okay. So the hippocampus houses the memory. It is the memory center. But when the amygdala has flipped the switch and said fear, fear, warning, shut everything down, the hippocampus goes with it. So when we're in a situation where we're feeling triggered, fight, flight, freeze, fawn, friend response, our memory is not online. It is off. We're not biologically capable of accessing that part of the brain. It is cut off the system. The amygdala has flipped the switch. Brainstem is in full control. All right. So that's important to understand, because the areas of our brain that deal with things like decision making and awareness live in that upstairs part of the brain. All right. So let's start looking at that. So our prefrontal cortex is the part of our brain that controls impulse, insight, and empathy. Now, we just finished talking about the five parts of social emotional learning, and we talked about social awareness, and we talked about empathy, right? So this is the part of the brain that empathy lives in within our prefrontal cortex. This is also the part of the brain that is responsible for responsible decision making. Okay. Now, our prefrontal cortex, one of the things that we need to know is, number one, it is not fully developed until the age of 25 to 27. Okay. So if you are under the age of 25 or 27, your brain is not finished being developed. Okay. The second thing is that when we're thinking about stuff like, for instance, when we move up here to the cortex and we're thinking about our thinking, this process called metacognition. When we are looking to access the real thinking that happens in our brain, that happens in a part of our brain that, one, again, is not fully developed until 25 to 27, but it also happens in a part of our brain that we cannot access if we are in a state of feeling heightened or triggered. And so biologically, there are certain things that are going on within our emotional processes and our biological processes that might cause us to behave in certain ways. All right. So let me add an additional context to this. So we're going to call it the downstairs brain and the upstairs brain just for simplification purposes. So our downstairs brain, again, is where our brainstem lives, fight, flight, freeze response, our limbic area, which is where the amygdala lives, as well as the hippocampus. Our upstairs brain is our prefrontal cortex and our cortex, where we are thinking about our thinking, where empathy lives, decision making, all of that. All right, cool. Now, when we look at this slide here, there are some questions that are represented here on the screen. So the first is the survival state. It says the message, am I safe? When we experience a triggering event, what our brain immediately wants to do, the amygdala, again, is saying, are we safe? That is the only question that our brain is concerned with answering. Are we safe? If your brain cannot say, yes, I am safe, then your brain will remain in your brainstem until you are able to say, yes, I am safe. Now, keep in mind, in that brainstem, this is the part of the brain that controls the involuntary systems, your fight, flight, or freeze response. You are not possible to It's not possible to access your memory center when you are in a state of wondering if you are safe. Okay? This is important to understand because no matter how much you try to get up there, you see at the top where it says, what can I learn? No matter how much you want to be at a place to be doing some learning, if you are in a survival state, your brain is not biologically capable of accessing the part of your brain that has to do with learning. All right. So after you ask yourself, am I safe? The next question that your brain is asking is, am I loved and am I connected? And depending on that statement, or depending on the response to that question, am I loved and connected? Then your brain is either going to remain in that loop. Am I safe? Am I loved and connected? Am I safe? Am I loved and connected? Or your brain will get the green light to say, yes, I am safe. I am loved and connected. And now I'm curious about what can I learn? So this is an idea of psychological safety. Right. When we think about our workplaces, when we think about children's classrooms, when we think about our relationships, when we think about different environments, if you're going into that environment, you're already feeling like you're not safe or you're not loved and connected, your brain is not going to be in a space where you're able to be free and creative and joyful and inspirational. You are very much in a shelled form because your brain is saying this is not a safe space for us to be. Okay. So I wanted to give us that foundational information because that's important to understand when we're talking about a concept like emotional awareness and emotional integrity. Because if my brain is kind of struggling with what's happening and I'm trying to will my upstairs brain to come online, I need to realize that I have to take care of my downstairs brain first. Now, I'll also add to this, if you are in a state of complex trauma or in a state of burnout, it becomes even more difficult to be able to move yourself out of that downstairs brain and into your upstairs brain. So, the first step in creating a safe space is being able to have the awareness and to be able to say, okay, this is what I'm feeling right now, and giving yourself grace in those feelings. So that's kind of the foundation of everything, right? So that is the emotional intelligence, emotional awareness part of it, right? Recognizing these are the different ways that my brain operates. This is how my feelings are situated within that. These are the different feelings that I see myself having consistently, what have you, right? Now, once you have that awareness, the next step then is having the emotional integrity. And emotional integrity is about being honest about how you feel, even when it's messy. So now we got to think about our people pleasing tendencies or our tendencies to try to just keep the peace. And, I don't want to rock the boat. So I'll just swallow all the stuff instead of saying exactly what it is that I am feeling. And for myself, this is something I don't remember what year I made the decision to say I'm going to practice emotional integrity, but I definitely made a choice and started utilizing it in my language. And I know it definitely was during the time that I was writing Discover Your Destiny and I was trying to get out of the abusive relationship and like all of that. And I remember people just asking me how I was doing, and I wasn't okay. And I hadn't been okay for a really long time. But people were just asking me out of habit. They weren't asking me because they actually wanted to know. So then I made a decision that I was going to stop muting myself and I was actually going to say how I was doing. So I started practicing that. When somebody would ask me how I was doing, instead of saying I was fine, I might say something like, I'm present. Or I might say something like, what are some of my other responses? I would say I'm here, I'm present. I might say if somebody said, how are you doing? I might say not well, but thank you for asking. Right. So I just kind of started taking these small steps toward let me be truthful in what I am actually feeling instead of being emotionally dishonest. Because it's very possible for you to be emotionally intelligent, like you know what you're feeling, you know what's going on, you know where it came from, you know why, you could track it, you know all of that. And then you can also still lie about how you're feeling. And it's funny because last week again we talked about neurodivergence, and a lot of times one of the characteristics that is often attributed to people who are neurodivergent is that we struggle with understanding emotions and understanding nuance and all of that. And it's really not that we struggle with that, because every neurodivergent person that I have met does a very good job at being able to identify emotions and what people are feeling. And that's not to say that the experience is universal, but this is my point. The issue do not be with neurodivergent people in our interpretation. The issue is oftentimes with people who are not practicing emotional integrity, because you're telling me that you're fine, but I'm also looking at you slamming stuff. I'm looking at your face. I'm listening to your tone, and you telling me that you okay, but your actions are not matching that. So now I'm glitching because I'm seeing that these evidences are not matching up. So the issue is not with my interpretation. The issue is with your lack of honesty. If you can't say amen, say ouch, right? So it's very possible to know what's going on, but still people are making a choice to mask, or they don't feel safe to be able to communicate, or they have not learned how to communicate how they are feeling with integrity. And it really requires courage and vulnerability to be able to practice emotional integrity. One, because you can't control how somebody's going to receive what you say, right? You can't control how somebody's going to receive your feelings. So there's a level of vulnerability that you have to have. Vulnerability being taking a risk of getting hurt, if you will. So there has to be a level of vulnerability for you to truly and honestly say, this is how I am feeling today, or this is how this situation made me feel. So there has to be a willingness to face what's inside and then name that before managing it all. Like there has to be a willingness to face it, there has to be a willingness to be able to name it. But when we practice emotional integrity, we stop gaslighting ourselves. Because that's what I felt like I was doing. I felt like I was real life gaslighting myself, that I'm like, everything's fine. Everything's totally fine. And I'm also somebody who would practice disassociation. So I would just be like, this isn't happening right now. This isn't even happening. Like I would just totally just, nope, it's not happening. Nope. Mm-mm. And so in many ways, I'm gaslighting myself. And so a part of that was me not telling myself that something isn't happening or telling myself that everything is fine and actually giving myself the opportunity to say, I'm not okay right now. I'm not okay. This is not okay. Whatever that might look like and sound like. Um, and it's a really important skill because there are so many emotionally disingenuous people out here in the world. So, how then do you practice becoming more emotionally intelligent and more emotionally integrous when you are around people who don't practice emotional integrity, right? So, now we got to think about audits and auditing the people that are around us and really thinking about the types of environments that we have curated around ourselves that may not be allowing us to show up in a space where we're able to be honest about how we're feeling and what we're thinking. So, this has been like a consistent practice for me. And it's interesting. One of the ways I practice emotional integrity, honestly, is on dating apps because I kind of like, first of all, dating is just wild. Okay, that's what I want you to know. Just if you are somebody that is in a relationship, God bless you and be happy that you're not out here in these streets, right? But if you are out here in these streets, you know that dating is just wild, period. Then, if you are someone who is a heterosexual woman who is looking to date men, it adds an additional layer of wildness because men and emotional integrity and emotional awareness, that don't really be their strong suit. I understand it's a generalization, but generally, it don't be their strong suit. So it's a lot that goes on, and there's a lot of invisible emotional labor that goes along with dating that can be a lot. So one of the things that I do is I practice telling people exactly how the hell I feel on these dating apps. Like, you not finna talk to me like that. You not finna you not about to minimize what I'm saying. You're not about to dismiss what I'm saying. You are going to honor who I am, and I practice that voice in this space with people that I may or may not choose to continue to know. And what it does is it practices that muscle, it keeps it fresh, it exposes me to the different types of people that are out here because I also sometimes feel like I can live a very insulated life. And I usually do surround myself with people who have emotional intelligence and emotional integrity. So when I tap into a world where it's kind of variable, it gives me different experiences to kind of be able to name. It gives me additional red flags to look for. It's my own social experiment, okay? But it also helps me to be able to show up for myself and to honor what I'm feeling because I don't owe these people nothing. They ain't paying my bills. They ain't doing nothing for me but trying to get to know me. And if that is what you are trying to do, then you are going to have to do that in a way that honors me. And I'm going to tell you what that's going to look like. So it very much gives me an opportunity to be able to practice those skills because these are skills. It's a skill to advocate for yourself, especially as a woman when the world is telling you that you don't have a right to a voice. Okay. So we got to get our reps in, if you will. And that's one of the ways that I do that. Another thing that I did is I got really intentional about paying attention to my body and how I feel in certain situations. So there are certain things that happen to me physically where I know that I'm getting frustrated. So for instance, when I am not feeling heard and I'm getting frustrated, my throat will get scratchy, my ears get hot. Sometimes not sometimes, my heart is usually racing. Sometimes I get like my brain be glitching, so I get real like I don't understand, does not compute. And so I had to start paying attention to those different signals that my body gives me so that I am honoring what I'm actually feeling. So in those moments, I usually will take a pause, and either I might say that, like, I'm taking a pause right now to assess, or I might say something like, I'm sorry, my brain is glitching right now and I don't understand what's happening, but I'm giving myself a chance to process what I am actually feeling and thinking, as opposed to just trying to push through and make sense of it all without the appropriate information that I need, which leads to my brain short circuiting. And I don't need my brain to short circuit. Okay. So that's one of the things that I really had to be intentional about, because I feel like I kept finding myself in situations where I was on the other side of a blackout. I had done popped off, I had done crashed out, I had done lost my shit. And now on the other side of that, I'm trying to piece back together what happened. So I'm like, I need to catch this on the front end so I'm not cleaning up stuff on the back. So a huge way to be able to do that is just pausing. Just pausing. And again, you might need to say that, like, I need to take a moment to pause and take a breath before I respond. Or it might sound like I want to give you a response that is appropriate and authentic to what I feel, and I'm not able to do that right now. So let me get back with you, or having some type of pause and statement practice, if you will, that you are able to implement so you're able to support yourself in these moments where you might need to process what the hell is going on, right? And then asking yourself intentionally, what am I feeling? I pulls up the feelings wheel, baby. I'm gonna tell anybody that know me in real life know I'm gonna pull up this feelings wheel, because that is going to give me a tool to be able to kind of guide what I actually am feeling and to be able to name it. I think another question to ask yourself is, what do you need in that moment? A lot of times water can be a powerful tool. And actually, let me take some right now. So one of the things that water does is it makes you slow down, because you have to actually like concentrate and drink. Water also helps to dilute the cortisol that is built up within our system, and cortisol is the stress hormone. So, if you are in a triggered state, cortisol and adrenaline has been released into your body so that you are able to fight whatever needs to happen. So, water helps to dilute that within your system so that your system is able to come back to homeostasis. So, you may in that moment need to drink some water, needs to drink some water. And that is okay to say that. So then once you have that time with yourself and you're saying to yourself, okay, I paused, I'm assessing, I'm taking my deep breaths, I'm using my feelings wheel. I see that I need some hydration. I see that I need to take a walk. I see that I need to leave this environment. I see that I need to put on my headphones so that I can go in my own world, whatever that looks like. Then the question is if I need to communicate now what I am feeling, is what I'm saying aligned with what I feel? That's where the integrity comes in. And what I will say is sometimes it might not be safe to do that, right? If you're in an environment, for instance, let's say you at work or something, and you're in a situation where you are feeling XYZ type of way, that might not be a safe space for you to be able to share that. You might be in a work environment where it feels like a war zone. Well, that's not really where you're going to bring your vulnerability. But then my question would be, where are you able to bring your vulnerability? Is that with your mental health specialist? Is that with your friend group? Is that with your partner? Is that with your journal? What does that look like for you to actually give yourself the space to say, this is what I'm feeling, this is what I'm holding, this is how this is impacting me? Because if we continue to pretend that everything is okay, all we are doing is gaslighting and lying to ourselves. And when we do that, we are teaching ourselves not to trust ourselves. And the whole time, your spirit is trying to guide you for what you need to do. But if you telling your spirit that it's lying every time, well, how y'all gonna have a good relationship, child? The relationship is ruptured, you know? So what are the spaces that you can create for yourself to be able to practice this emotional integrity without feeling like you have to defend how you're feeling or over explain? What are the spaces in people that you can communicate with that help you to feel safe within what you are experiencing? So you may have those spaces, but if you do not, and even if you do, journaling is also an effective way to really think through processing different types of experiences that you might be having. So you might want to ask yourself things like, when do I feel most emotionally honest? And when do I feel pressured to hide how I feel? Again, this is like there might be certain people, certain spaces, certain times that you see I can be emotionally honest in these areas, but over here, I feel like I cannot. So then the question would be identifying those spaces and people, and what are we going to do about that? Another good question is, what does emotional safety feel like in my body? Now, this is something we've been talking about over the past several weeks. I've been asking y'all consistently, what qualities and characteristics do you need to see in order to feel safe in community? What does that look like? What does that feel like? Where a huge part of that is you understanding what safety feels like in your body. And honestly, I don't know that I really felt safety in my body until I left the US, to be fully frank with you. There were definitely times that I felt more grounded in context of the bigger thing when I lived in the US, but leaving the US gave me an opportunity to just be with my body outside of an area where I was hypervigilant. I was always trying to think about what else might happen or what have you. And I was able to experience what emotional safety feels like. It's important to know that because then when you get around somebody who does not make you feel emotionally safe, you're able to identify it because you've already identified what homeostasis and balance feels like for you. Another question to ask yourself might be, what emotions am I avoiding? And what might they be trying to tell me? So, this is not necessarily an emotion, but like people will say this. For instance, I might say something like, oh, I'm getting sick. And then somebody's like, oh, I rebuke that. Okay. Also, though, I'm getting sick, right? So, what type of emotional or spiritual bypassing might be happening that you are not actually dealing with? And what might that be trying to tell you, right? There are emotions, the holidays are coming up. So, you might be sitting there thinking to yourself, like, I don't really want to be in certain environments with certain people or certain family members, or somebody gonna say this or say that. Like, what am I avoiding in those situations? And what is that telling me? It might be telling me these are not safe people for me. It might be telling me that my spirit has outgrown this particular environment, this particular relationship, right? So, what am I avoiding? And what is that trying to tell me? And then the last question is, where in my life do I need to practice more emotional integrity, either with myself or with others? Emotional integrity definitely starts with yourself. If you can't be honest with yourself, you can't be honest with nobody else. Okay. So it definitely has to start with you. But then there may also be other relationships that actually we need to be a little bit more emotional integrous, and we need to talk about how this relationship or this particular situation or what you said, whatever, has made me feel, because I want to honor my feelings and I want to honor my emotions because they do matter. So, those are a few questions that you can kind of journal about, right? Or bring up even in your friend groups or with your partner or with people who are willing to have a safe environment where you're able to have these types of conversations that are going to help you repair the relationship that you have with yourself, with your heart, with your spirit, with your brain, with your body, right? We are doing the work to help us reintegrate into our lives. And a part of that is honoring what's happening within our emotional spaces and what is happening within our brain. So, I do want to offer an affirmation before we get out of here. And feel free, if this affirmation does it for you, perfect. If you have your own that you would like to share, feel free to put that into the comments and share that with us because we can all benefit from different affirmations. I also want to highlight that I do have an affirmation video here on Minding My Black Ass Business. Brown Girl Affirmations, and it's about 10 minutes. And within it, I get a lot of really good feedback of people saying that they feel empowered. They take what they need. All the affirmations might not be what you need right now, but they might be something that you need. Okay. So, anyway, so for today, this is the affirmation that I want to offer. I honor what I feel without shame or rush. My emotions are sacred messengers, not enemies to silence. Emotions are welcome in my space. So, if that affirmation feels good to you, let's go ahead and write that down on a sticky note, if you will. Put that in your notebook, put that everywhere that you're able to see. Or if there is one that you resonate with more, please do feel free to share that again in the comments. So, as we wrap up, I do invite you to share at least one thing that you learned today, or maybe one emotion that you're sitting with, if you will. So, talk to us in the comments. Also, if you're in the archive, come over to the chat and have a conversation with us about emotional intelligence and the power of emotional integrity and how that is landing on you. So, let's keep this conversation going. Here in the chat, we have I am enough. Yes. Absolutely, right. And knowing that at a core level, that God really took time to curate and craft everything about us intentionally, that we are able to say, yeah, I am sure am wonderfully and perfectly crafted, am and is enough just the way that I am. Even as I am working to show up better, I am enough. I am inherently enough because I am here and here with purpose, right? So, it's not perfection, y'all. It's not about emotional intelligence is not about perfection, right? It really is practice. It's the practice of doing it. It's the practice of again creating safe spaces so that you are able to have an opportunity to practice emotional intelligence and integrity, but also giving yourself grace and space in this process and understanding that other people are also in a process, right? So everybody in your life may not have the capacity to make space for your emotions. So I ask you again, where then are the spaces where you are able to feel held and seen within your emotional capacity? That is really, really, really important. I just want to uplift again the archive. We are building out a space over in the archive where everybody is a keeper and you are the person who keeps the things that are important to you. Maybe you want to keep recipes, maybe you want to keep music, maybe you want to keep stories alive, right? But we are over in the archive sharing our thoughts and being in intentional conversation and community with others. So if that sounds like something that you are wanting to do and you're wanting to support the work that we're doing here at Minding My Black Ass Business, please do come over to patreon.com/Minding My Black Ass Business. The archive is $5 a month. The $5 gets access to every collection that is in there. So we have the inner circle, that is my collection. So that's where all of my things live. We also have the sunflower path where we talk about healing and restoration and connecting back to our bodies. We have the change corridor where we talk about activism and getting things ready and together. There's a Discover Your Destiny collection over there for those of us who are looking for the spiritual guidance and really thinking about connecting back to God and building that deep relationship. And then there are various podcasts. Y'all, my point is it's a whole universe over there, all right? It's a whole universe. So come hang out, all right? Come hang out. It's $5 a month and it's a really good time. So please do come and share. All right. So that's it. That's all for today. I do want to leave us with a closing quote. And today's closing quote is by Bell Hooks. And it says, emotional intelligence is not about being in control, it's about being in connection. Our goal here is to connect and reconnect with our brains, our hearts, our spirits, our bodies, to reintegrate all those pieces of ourselves so that we are able to show up as whole people. You know why? Because we are enough. And all we need to do is to really tap into the spirit that's inside of us to be able to insulate ourselves in a way that will protect us from everything that is happening out here in this world, y'all, because the world is crazy. The world is crazy and is only going to get crazier, right? But our act of resistance that we can give to ourselves is turning that mirror inside. All of that we were shooting out to try to fix the world, we're going to turn all of that right back in so that we're really able to gird ourselves, give ourselves the rest and restoration that we need to be able to go on and build community and really support ourselves during the days that we have and the years that we have coming forward. All right. So, again, I invite you to be in community with us and to share in the chat something that has resonated with you during this time today. And share this with somebody else, child. Send them the link and tell them, hey, girl, watch this. Hey, my boy, my non-binary person. Hey, watch this, okay? Because this is the work. This is the work that we need to do, and this is the work that is going to help us get the freedom that we deserve. All right. So that's it. That's all, y'all. I appreciate y'all hanging out. Bye.
Thank you for listening to The Frolicking Truth, where joy meets justice and our nervous systems get free. Please be sure to like, rate, and comment. Subscribe to the YouTube page, Minding My Black Ass Business, and follow me on all social platforms. Until next time, bye.